It started, as strange things often do, with something that didn't make sense. A single orange balloon floating above a cornfield just off Highway 16. It was early October, the sky pale and paper-thin, and the balloon, unmoving despite the breeze, hung in the air like punctuation in a sentence no one had spoken yet. Graver's Mill wasn't the kind of place people visited on purpose. It was a town swallowed by its own forgetting. One grocery store, one high school. A gas station that doubled as the town hall and a part-time veterinarian's office. The locals called it quiet. Outsiders called it dead. Either way, nothing ever happened there. Until the balloon. Wes Halpern had only been in Graver's Mill 6 months when the first disappearance occurred. A 17-year-old named Chase Burrows vanished while walking home from football practice. The police said he probably ran away, like kids sometimes do. But Chase's parents swore he wasn't that kind of boy. Posters went up, candlelight vigils flickered and died. The town's heartbeat skipped. 2 weeks later, another orange balloon appeared. This one floated in the alley behind the high school. A janitor saw it hovering at eye level, perfectly still in the morning fog. When he reached for it, the balloon rose just out of reach and disappeared into the air with a faint, metallic whisper. 3 days later, Jessica Liu, a senior honor student, went missing. Her car was found idling in the school parking lot, door open, phone on the seat. No sign of struggle, just an orange balloon resting on the hood. Wes didn't notice the pattern at first. He'd come to Graver's Mill after burning out in Chicago, retreating to the quiet like a wounded animal. He lived alone in a weather-beaten farmhouse and worked remote IT support for companies he never saw. He barely talked to anyone, except the waitress at May's Diner and the clerk at the post office who never seemed to blink. But after the third balloon and the third missing teen, he started to pay attention. Her name was Andrea Polk, 15, aspiring artist, gone without a trace. And Wes saw it, the orange balloon, floating at the edge of his field while he was fixing a loose gutter. It didn't move, didn't bob or spin. It just stared, or at least that's how it felt, like it had eyes. He watched it for over an hour, frozen. When he finally worked up the nerve to approach, it drifted back into the corn, slowly, deliberately, as though it were waiting for him to follow. He didn't. That night, Wes dreamed of strings, hundreds of them, thin and luminous, dangling from the ceiling of an impossibly dark room. He floated among them, weightless. Then he felt it, the tug. A sharp, aching pull from behind his navel, like something drawing him upward. He looked down and saw the string wrapped around his waist, tightening. He tried to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. The last thing he saw before waking was a face, no features, just the suggestion of a grin behind an orange sphere. He woke drenched in sweat, mouth open in a silent scream. Over the next few days, he became obsessed. He started keeping a map, pinning the last known locations of the missing teens and marking where balloons had been seen. A pattern emerged, a spiral curling in toward the dense woods north of town. The locals refused to talk about it. When Wes brought up the balloons at the diner, the room fell silent. The waitress Shelley shook her head and whispered, "Don't. You'll bring it closer." "Bring what closer?" he asked. She just dropped his check and walked away. On a hunch, he visited the town library. It was dusty, neglected, run by an old woman named Marcia, who looked like she hadn't changed her sweater since 1983. She didn't say a word as he combed through the archives. What he found chilled him. Disappearance clusters happened in Graver's Mill every 11 years, going back to the early 1900s. Each time, a string of young people vanished. Each time, survivors, if there were any, mentioned a balloon. Always orange, always floating. The last recorded incident had been in 2012. Before that, 2001. Then 1990. No one ever linked the events publicly. It was as though the town agreed to forget. That same night, someone slipped a photograph under Wes's door. A Polaroid, black and white, grainy. A child standing in a field, his face obscured by the shape of an orange balloon. On the back, a single word, "Remember." He called the sheriff. No one answered. When he drove into town, the station was empty. Lights on, doors unlocked, no cars in the lot. And then he saw it, floating beside the flagpole in front of the school. Another orange balloon. He stepped out of his car, walked toward it. This one didn't flee. It hovered, waiting. He reached for the string. The moment his fingers closed around it, everything changed. The world blinked. He stood in the same spot, but the sky was red. The town was silent. A dense fog blanketed everything. Shadows moved within it, too tall, too thin, flickering like candle flames. He felt them watching. The balloon began to tug. He followed. It led him into the woods, through brambles and gnarled trees, over a creek that shimmered unnaturally. He walked for what felt like hours until he reached a clearing where the fog lifted. In the center stood a figure, 7 feet tall, limbs like cables, skin the color of old parchment, and instead of a head, an enormous orange balloon. The balloon man. Wes couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure raised one long finger and touched the balloon where its face should be. A ripple passed through the air. Wes heard voices, dozens, screaming, crying, pleading. He saw flashes, memories not his own. Andrea painting at her desk, Jessica laughing in the locker room, Chase running drills on the field, then pain, fear, silence. The balloon man stepped forward. They forget, it said. The voice was inside Wes's head, oily and sharp. What are you? Wes asked, voice cracking. What remains? What is left when joy is stolen? I collect, I contain. Why children? Because they still remember how to fear. Wes backed away, but the string around his wrist, he hadn't realized he'd still been holding it, tightened. He felt his memories slipping. Names, faces, his mother's voice. Gone. Let go, he whispered. The balloon man tilted its head. You already have. The world spun. Then everything went dark. Wes awoke in his bed. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. Birds chirped. He remembered nothing. Not the dreams. Not the woods. Not the balloon. Only a strange feeling of loss he couldn't explain. He went about his day. Made coffee. Opened his laptop. Answered emails. And when he opened the door to get the mail, he didn't even notice the orange balloon floating just above his porch. Wes didn't sleep for the next 48 hours. It wasn't fear, not at first. It was obsession. He scoured every online forum, every local rumor, every scrap of folklore about lost children, unexplained vanishings, and anything involving orange balloons. But there was nothing that matched what was happening in Graver's Mill. No myths about beings like this, no occult ties, no cult activity. It was as if the balloon man existed only here, only now, a parasite that didn't want to be known. Wes began keeping audio logs. If he vanished, someone needed to know the steps that led to it. Day 1. I feel watched even when the lights are on. I caught myself staring at my screen for 30 minutes, and I don't remember what I was reading. I thought I heard Sophie humming from the hallway last night, but she's gone. There was nothing there. Just a balloon in the bathroom mirror. Not in the bathroom, in the mirror. I don't even know how to explain that. Day 2. It's growing stronger. I walked into the diner today and no one recognized me. Not even Stacy, who poured me coffee every day for 6 months. She smiled like I was a stranger. She got my order wrong. I asked if she was okay. She said, "Who are you?" like I'd never been there before. I think the balloon man doesn't just take people. He erases them. By the 3rd day, Wes began having blackouts. Not full unconsciousness, just missing time. He'd find himself in different parts of town, holding things he couldn't remember picking up. Once it was a single orange thread. Another time, a matchbook from a bar that had burned down in the 80s. One night, he woke up in the woods, standing in front of that same tree again. But this time, it wasn't surrounded by balloons. It was surrounded by faces. Not physical ones, impressions in the bark. Dozens of them. Mouths open in silent screams. Wes screamed too, and the sound folded in on itself like being smothered by cotton. When he blinked again, he was in his house. An orange balloon floated gently above his bed. He didn't touch it. He found Sophie again the next evening. At first, he thought it was a hallucination. She was standing by the train depot, barefoot, her clothes hanging off her frame like they'd been soaked and dried without her body in them. Her eyes were glassy, but her smile was too wide, too symmetrical. "Sophie," she turned slowly. "It's not so bad," she said. "You were gone. You disappeared." "I know, but I saw it all. I felt it." Her voice had an echo beneath it, like something else was repeating her words a beat behind. "It doesn't want to hurt anyone, Wes. It wants company. It just doesn't know how to ask." "You're not Sophie," he said. Her smile didn't falter. "Then why are you still talking to me?" She vanished the moment his phone buzzed. A voicemail, unknown number. The message was only static. And under the static, breathing, heavy, childlike. and one word, slow and garbled. Friend! Wes snapped. He drove to the police station, demanded someone help, told them everything. The officers stared at him blankly. They called in a mental health worker. By midnight, he was back home with a pamphlet in his hand titled Grounding Techniques for Dissociation. That night, his doorknobs melted into balloon strings in a dream he couldn't wake from. Then came the returnees. It started with Sophie. Then two other kids long thought gone, reappearing in town, smiling, eerily calm. They insisted they'd never left, that they'd been resting, that Graver's Mill had gotten so quiet lately. Hadn't it? But they weren't right. They didn't blink unless spoken to. They laughed at the wrong times, and their shadows didn't match. Not always. Wes confronted one, Polly, a 16-year-old who had vanished in February. He found him standing at the gas station, staring at the soda machine. "You remember me?" Wes asked. Polly turned, smiled. "Of course. You're the one who's not adjusting." "Adjusting to what?" Polly leaned in, whispering with perfect serenity. "To not existing." It clicked then. The balloon man wasn't killing people, not in the traditional sense. He was consuming their presence, their context, wiping them from memory, history, emotion, leaving shells behind, empty placeholders that only looked like the people they used to be. Graver's Mill wasn't haunted. It was fading. Desperate, Wes made a plan. He remembered the pattern, the final fire, always a fire, a place where it ended, where the tether snapped and the cycle closed for another 11 years. He drove to the abandoned church just outside town limits, the one from the 1956 incident. No one had touched it in decades. Windows boarded, walls sunken, but still standing. Local legend said the last fire had started here, though the official story was lightning. Wes brought gasoline, not out of madness, but as a reset if it... Inside the church, dust and rot greeted him like old ghosts. But on the far wall, behind the collapsed altar, someone had carved into the plaster. Not words, faces, dozens of them, the same bark faces he saw in the forest, and in the center a perfect orange circle, fresh and glistening as if the paint had just dried. Wes turned, heart hammering. In the pews, people. Sophie, Polly, Marcia, his neighbor, all of them seated, smiling, staring forward, at him. And floating above the pulpit, the balloon man. It had no body, no limbs, just the shape of a man in silhouette. Its face a single orange balloon that pulsed like a beating heart. "You want me," it said in 100 voices at once. "You stayed, you watched, you remembered." Wes dropped the match. The church burned for hours. Authorities said it was squatters, or lightning. There were no bodies found. No one in town remembered the names of the people who were lost in it. Not even their own family members. Graver's Mill got quieter after that. The streets grew emptier. The world moved on. But one man remained. Wes. He survived the fire, or thought he did. He now lives in a small apartment in a nameless city, works from home, keeps the blinds drawn, records everything, obsessively. No one calls him by name anymore. His phone never rings. And when he walks by a mirror, he sees a balloon, orange and smiling.